I can't miss out on that. Like at 30% of the field's going to play Stephon Diggs and I'm going to be sitting here with like holding the bag. Like that seems bad. We are back. It's the Joe Holka Show presented by FanDuel. Week 8, games of the week, DFS stacks, and best bets. Going deep into some of the key situations that you have to get right this week in fantasy football, DFS, and betting. Of course, we build a tournament lineup around these stacks and ideas at the end. Let's jump into it, Reeves. Game number 1, we have Philadelphia at Detroit. The Eagles are 3.5-point road favorites per FanDuel Sportsbook. The over-under is sitting at 48 points right now. But Reeves, the Sharps are absolutely hammering the over right now. 95% of the money, only 43% of the betting tickets. So when you first saw this game on the slate, kind of a weird slate overall, what were your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, definite weird slate, especially when you talk about like the quarterback position and what the types of quarterbacks we like to play for high ceilings. Obviously, we have the 2 great pocket passers in Brady and Stafford on the slate, but we've removed all of like the Konami guys that do it all. It's Josh Allen, and then we've got Kyler on Thursday night. We've got Dak on Sunday night. We've got Mahomes on Monday night. All these guys Lamar's gone by. So it's kind of a unique slate in terms of where guys are positioned and with just the low bye weeks, how it works out. But we do have one Konami guy, and Jalen Hurts, who's on the board. 54% of his fantasy production is coming from rushing production alone. So that's out there on the table. We would assume that he's going to score points outside of the fourth quarter against the Lions.
That'd be nice.
He has had to be fair to Jalen Hurts in the situation he's been placed in. He hasn't played well himself, but obviously the coaching staff, we've talked about Nick Sirianni a couple of times on the show, but they've also had a really ridiculously tough schedule. I mean, he's faced just 2 teams in the bottom half of passing EPA per pass attempt. The last 3 games have been teams that have been very good against the pass so far this season. I know people love to think the Bucs are a team that's bad against the pass only because teams throw 45 times on them a game, but on a per efficiency basis, like they're really good against the pass. So we got him against the bottom team, number 32, we should say, in terms of EPA allowed per pass attempt, the Detroit Lions. Everyone's kind of gotten there on them this season. So hopefully you're going to see him actually produce some drives outside of the fourth quarter for us. So he's out in play. He is expensive because he keeps getting there. He's the only quarterback that's had 20 or more fantasy points in all 7 games this season. By hook or crook, he's gotten there. I also think this is a good spot. We'll start too. Let's start with the chalk first. There's no way that Dallas Goddard's not the highest owned tight end on the slate. He was the biggest beneficiary of the Zach Ertz trade. We saw him play a season high 93% of the snaps last week. He ran a route on 88% of the team dropbacks. That was 3rd among all tight ends in week 7. He only had the 3 catches for 70 yards, but had a ton of air yards, over 100 air yards. Detroit is 29th in yards allowed per target to opposing tight ends. So given his price on FanDuel, I believe he will easily be the most rostered tight end this weekend. That doesn't mean we should ignore his other running mate, though, Devontae Smith. He's kind of underpriced, priced him up a little bit, but he's still underpriced based on his usage. Still seeing 7.6 targets per game, 23% team target share. Detroit's allowing a league high 10.8 yards per target to opposing wide receivers. They've also allowed a 52% completion rate on throws over 15 yards downfield. That's 28th in the NFL. So you do have a couple stacking partners if you don't want to roll in with the naked Hurts. We played DeAndre Swift a lot last week. He came in really light,
really low
in terms of ownership. He was real, like low single digit rostership, and he should have had a second touchdown for us. He had a walk-in touchdown where he ran an option route and him and Goff got crossed up. He would have walked in on the touchdown.
You think people are nervous just to play these Detroit guys in general? Like, even if you're stacking it up, like there's like been tons of lineups, even at the higher stakes, where people just aren't bringing it back with Detroit guys right now.
Yeah, I don't know what the reason is for DeAndre Swift, because he's a guy that's really gotten there a lot. I mean, kind of like Swift, he's been a guy that's gotten there late. He did have the 63-yard touchdown in the first quarter for us last week. But I mean, he leads the NFL in receiving points by a wide margin. He leads the NFL in catches in the fourth quarter. His price really hasn't gone like really bananas like either. He's kind of stayed in this area of pricing. But we'll see if there's a little point chasing now, because we're 7 weeks into the season and he's hit in 5 of the 7 weeks. Eventually people are gonna be like, oh, I should start playing that guy, right? You would think, right? And the Eagles have been really good against the run, but they are allowing 12.8 receiving points per game to running backs. That's 23rd in the NFL. So that kind of lines up too, because Swift hasn't been a good runner in terms of when they actually line up and run the football. That's why we've seen a lot of Jamal Williams in neutral game script. He's been a lot better in terms of the running game. But yeah, I mean, the receivers are always tough to play because are you going to play Khalif Raymond? Are you excited to do that? Are you ever going to play the Sun God? Really tough. Hawkinson really has been a guy that hasn't gotten there either. He's had some productive games. He's got 28% of team targets the past 2 weeks, but just hasn't had a high ceiling. We haven't seen his passing game offer a high ceiling in general, right? Outside of Swift. And that's based on the position he plays. So really kind of tough to bring it back. If there was ever a matchup though that matched up for Goff's strengths, it would be this one. Opposing passers against the Eagles are averaging a league low 6.5 yards per depth of target. Jared Goff is averaging a league low 6.6 ADOT. So if there ever was a matchup to just line up and have a bunch of 4-yard completions and have him be effective, I guess it would be this one. I should also mention too with Miles Sanders, kind of being out, maybe we'll see some Kenneth Gainwell in terms of split. I think I'm looking at the Kenneth Gainwell Boston Scott situation a little bit similar to Arizona, where we're probably looking at Kenneth Gainwell be like a Chase Edmonds like player. Okay. Like he maybe we get a touchdown from. He has been using the red zone a little bit more than Chase Edmonds has, but just that archetype of player. So he could be a guy that has 65, 70 yards against this Lions defense, but doesn't get into the paint. And then, you're at 9 or so points, which is fine for his salary. But I don't know how much will land on him, especially with Elijah Mitchell being $100 cheaper on FanDuel than him. Maybe he's just the pivot to Elijah Mitchell this week. But yeah, that pretty much covers most of the pieces of this game. You look at anyone else here?
Yeah, it's definitely a game where there's some really cheap options, right? So even though it's kind of similar to last week in that you have to pay all the way up for Hurts, but if you're stacking him with 1 or 2 options, it becomes a little bit more palatable as a combination at that point. So I think that's really, Dallas Goddard at 5,900. If people want to look at even just the stat line and be like, oh, he only had 5 targets for 70 yards, he played almost 100% of the snaps. So at that price range, you're not going to find guys with that type of upside. We've been waiting for him not to have Zach Ertz to ruin everything for it feels like years at this point. So I'm in on that. Devonta Smith's price is up a little bit, but I still think against Detroit, there's so much to like on the Philly side of the ball that I'm curious to see kind of how ownership shakes out. I think all of these guys are probably going to be anywhere from 10 to 15%. Maybe if Gainwell gains a little bit more steam, all these guys are so cheap, man. You could literally stack up this entire Philly side of the ball and still play a lot of the studs on this slate. So I guess that's what I'm struggling with a little bit, more the ownership side of things. But these guys are all really great point per dollar plays. So hard to argue with anything on that side of it. Is there a bet in this game that you really like, Reeves?
Yeah, for as cold as the Eagles have run, I feel like this is a little bit of a disrespectful line for them. I definitely believe they're a lot better than the Lions, despite the play that they've had. Like I said, the Eagles have had a really hard schedule to open the year, and I think that they're going to win this one.
All right. So, by the way, guys, if you're watching this and you enjoy talking through some tournament strategy, game theory, all of that stuff, I do review all of my DFS lineups and decisions on Twitter every Tuesday. So definitely check that out. There's a link in the description for my Twitter. If you haven't followed me over there, would love it if you guys would do that. Also, if your season hasn't gone well so far, I actually have 12 DFS strategy threads that I wrote in the off season that I spent a ton of time on. So hopefully if things aren't going so well, maybe you got to get back in the lab and figure out what you're doing wrong. It's 100% free. It's my pinned tweet almost all the time. So check that out. Reeves, the next game that we're going to talk about today, Carolina at Atlanta. The Falcons are 3-point home favorites in this one. The over-under is currently sitting at 47 points per FanDuel Sportsbook. This is one that, again, I stacked up pretty heavily and aggressively this Atlanta side of the ball. So it makes sense if this is the week and I was just a week early. What are your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, that one was a profitable stack for me too. The lineup we built was one that the combo I played a lot. I played a lot more Kyle Pitts than Calvin Ridley, so that helped me out.
Shout out to
you. So that one helped out, but unfortunately, because I was touting Burrow last week, I ran a lot more T Higgins than Chase, so it worked the other direction too, the other way. But yeah, the Falcons are starting to figure things out a little bit offensively. Now they have had a pretty light schedule here of late, so this is the best defense they're gonna face since we started to see them do a little bit better offensively. But we've also seen Carolina's defense get a little bit more up than they now they face some tougher opponents in the start of the year as well. So there's some give and take here. Also, this game could go overlooked just because, and especially on this show, I didn't want to talk about Bills. Everyone's talking about the Bills, and everyone's going to talk about the Bucks always every week. So it gives us a chance to mix in. When do we ever really talk about the Panthers?
This is a good slate to get a little bit different on some of these other games, I think. So I like that.
And, listen, I don't know if we'll land on Sam Darnold. Probably not. But, if there was a game for this passing game to bounce back, it would be against this Falcons defense. The Falcons are currently 30th in the NFL in passing points allowed per game. It's why we got the 2 last week. They're 30th in completion rate allowed. They're 30th in touchdown rate allowed to opposing passers. We have seen Darnold at least show us some spike weeks early in the season. And, so at least we know it exists. I don't know if we'll end up landing there. We'll see when we build a lineup at the end of the show. But if there was a spot for him to bounce back while everyone's kicking him, it would be against this Falcons defense, right? Like Carolina can't run the football. They lead the league in rate of runs that fail to gain yardage. The Falcons, the only thing they do kind of moderately respectfully well as a defense is they are 9th in yards per carry allowed to running backs. I don't expect really Chubb Hubbard to go really bananas here, even if he's effective. He'll need to get in the box to be effective, basically, is what you have to do if you're a Carolina rusher right now. DJ Moore is still getting like a top-notch usage. FanDuel hasn't wavered on DJ Moore, though. They're still jamming him up. He's 7,700 over there. The usage has been there. I don't know what to tell you. Mike Leone's not here, but Robbie Anderson, getting a lot of prayer yards, a lot of usage. On the year now, he's 18th in air yards. He's run the 4th most routes among all receivers, and he's the wide receiver 61 in fantasy points.
I can't. There's got to be a point, right, Reeves, where you get to a point on some of these players where it's just not worth it mentally anymore to go there, right? Like that's kind of where I'm starting to get with
he's so cheap though. They just don't care. FanDuel is like a Tyson. They're like, please play him.
Yeah, because literally his ownership was low. So you're sitting there with your mini stacks and your Robbie Anderson last week and you're feeling pretty good about it. And then you're like, yeah, if you were to tell me that he was going to get he's got 30 targets in the last 2 weeks and he's got
20 40, targets, 25 yards.
I don't know, man. I literally is this, I guess, how many times can you go back to the well and get burned? And then my panic is that the 1 week where I'm not going to have a Robbie mini stack, that's where he's just going to go completely crazy, man. So I guess, what are you doing with Robbie? I guess do the opposite of what I'm doing, I suppose.
I mean, I'm at least going to make one lineup with him just for the reason you said, because it's the FOMO now. But as far as going over, I'm with you. It's Fair. Not he's not someone where I'm looking to probably go 15% now. I mean, I'm usually, my receivers are mostly all in the 10 to 15% area.
Sure.
But I don't think I'm going to go wild with them at this point. But there's a little bit of FOMO. Now, the other side of the ball, like I said, Carolina's defense has at least been a little bit more lenient. They're not as lenient as some of these offenses the Falcons have played of late. So keep that in mind. But there are some interesting pieces here. I mean, Cordaro Patterson has gone the way of rational coaching, right? When we had 4 weeks of Cordaro Patterson where people said it's not sustainable. And you know what the Falcons have done? Just expand his usage.
Mm-hmm.
That's all they've done. It's completely expand his usage. After playing 59% of snaps in London, comes out of the bye, plays a season high 73% of snaps. He out touches Mike Davis 16-4. He gets a carry inside the 10. He converts for a touchdown. He played 21 snaps in the backfield. He played 17 at wide receiver. Then he played another 8 in the slot. It's kind of what we thought was going to happen to him after his rookie season when everyone was in. And the Falcons are the one team based on what happened because they struggled the first 3 weeks of the season. They took a step back, say, what is our offense doing well? This is one of the few things we're doing well. We need to incorporate him more, and they have. Very rarely does rational coaching win out. You think it would be obvious, right, that these situations would play out like this? They don't. But hey, he's getting more usage, and he's become kind of a more of a wild card that we can latch onto, or at least more of a floor based on his usage. Calvin Ridley, I'm the same way like you. We talked a little bit on the show last week, and the usage is there, but he's another guy just at his price point. I just have a hard time getting to him. It's why I played more Pitts last week. I just end up liking more receivers than I typically do Calvin Ridley. There's going to be a week where he absolutely smashes. He got another 10 targets last week. You just look at his peripherals. They're all so good. 27% team target share, 40% of the air yards. It's just, he just can't get there. He's, season low, career low ADOT. He's got a career low in catch rate. He's got a career low in yards per target, yards per catch. It's just all lined up there. I kind of feel like I'm not going to get there until he falls below some of these other players in terms of pricing. I mean, look at where he's priced now. You're telling me at his price, I could just go up to Chris Godwin. I can go up to Stephon Diggs. It's not hard to get to those other options and chase this when he's been more of a floor-based player. But like I said, it exists. The usage exists. It's out there, right. And he's the run back option. Obviously, Pitts has run ultra hot. The past 2 weeks. We talked about it on the show last week. The usage was there before Calvin Ridley missed that London game. We were just waiting for it. Now you see he hits in a game with Calvin Ridley, and we're seeing it all kind of come together. He's really kind of just unguardable. You see him he's catching balls on Xavier Howard, like ice games. Like, it's not just linebackers and safeties. He's catching it on top cornerbacks in the NFL. Now he's 4th among all tight ends in targets per game. He's now 3rd in receiving yards. So it's all kind of come together for Kyle Pitts here. And on the slate with no Travis Kelce, Darren Waller's on bye, Mark Andrews is on bye. He's kind of sitting there alone at the top this week.
Yeah, we were just talking about the Philly game and how it's like really easy to stack up Hurts because the weapons are so cheap. This is like the complete opposite of that. We got Patterson at 7,300. We got Calvin Ridley at 7K. Kyle Pitts at 6,800. And then if you want to bring back, and maybe it's not Robbie Anderson, it's 7,700 for DJ Moore. Like you said, he's very expensive. And just looking at the Sims over at runthesims.com just to see, I'm always curious like which games are popping kind of in the optimal rate more often. The guy that's leading the way here, Reeves, is actually Cordaro Patterson at 7,300. He's in 16% of the optimals if we were to simulate this slate 10,000 times. So my biggest question is, and I asked this to Harmon also, but I'm curious your thoughts. Cordaro Patterson, who do you think he eats into the most? I actually think that his floor is probably safe, but if he does have that ceiling game, do you think that really affects Pitts, or does that really just affect Calvin Ridley? Because those guys are priced to a point where like you have to have them go crazy and to fully like double stack like you'd like to do with Matt Ryan. Now I'm just struggling with the price a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, it's really tough to say because the one game Patterson did go nuts and had the 3 touchdowns against Washington. I mean, neither of the other guys got there. It was just all him. So it's really tough to say. I mean, this is an offense, though, that doesn't have a lot of tangible depth. I mean, you've got Russell Gage, Olamide Zacchaeus, and Mike Davis. Like, these guys aren't really contributing a lot. So maybe if you look at the opportunity, he shouldn't be eating into anybody because the opportunities have still existed for Calvin Ridley, right? Like, it's not an opportunity problem. And not for either guy. So
just don't play Mike Davis, I suppose, is the answer to this one.
I think that's really it. That's kind of what we've been on.
All right. So if you were to stack this one up, Reeves, like, do you prefer the Atlanta side of this game, or are you going to get freaky with some Darnold stacks this week?
I think that it is a spot. I mean, we don't avoid the Falcons, right? Like, we want to stack guys against the Falcons, and no one's going to want to play Darnold. I don't even know if I want to play him. But I mean, we saw it. We got there with Tua last week. Like, this team can't run the football well, the Panthers. So like they're and we've seen them, they're willing to throw a lot. So I mean, it seems like a really obvious spot where we would be on this if we just didn't have this 3-week sample of Darnold being terrible.
Yeah, we're going to have to, I think, see where ownership shakes out. I don't mind it, right? Like I said, if you're going to be attacking this game, and the game environment should be pretty strong, there should be a lot of pass attempts on both sides. Yeah.
So the thing about FanDuel is, and FanDuel's pricing on quarterbacks, is typically we want to pay up for quarterback on FanDuel because the gap is tighter at quarterback, right? Like your $7,100 guys are way tighter than like playing a Cooper Kupp versus I don't know who's like a 6K receiver like Devontae Smith or T Higgins. There's a wider gap, right? Like in terms of outcome, but like a quarterback, it's too tight. Like it needs to be wider. So like with having all these like alphas off the slate though this week, we've got Josh Allen, and then we're really just trying to arbitrage passing production on everyone outside of Jalen Hurts.
True.
So like we can do that with these guys this week. So, you know what I mean? Like, because if we're only trying to arbitrage passing production outside of Josh Allen and Jalen Hurts, then Darnold actually would be kind of a slate that makes him more viable than a typical slate would.
Do you think that like same argument though makes it like a little bit more in favor of just like paying the extra salary to get up to the elite options, just because it's easier to get there? Because it's I mean, I can make $1,000 work to get up to Josh Allen. You know what I mean? So I can see both sides of it. I've been struggling with this
for Josh Allen. I mean, I'm talking about on a typical slate. We typically have these guys that do both, right? That can have the 30-point games. For this particular slate, Josh Allen's really the only guy. I mean, even look at Brady. For him to get to 30 points, he has to throw 5 touchdown passes.
True.
Like same thing for Stafford. Like he's got to throw 4 or 5 touchdown passes because they don't. Stafford just had the first QB1 overall scoring week of the season last week without a rushing point. For the number 1 overall score. And then if you look at the top 6 scorers, in terms of in FanDuel scoring, those guys are averaging 5.1 rushing points per game. Now we remove that from this slate because we said it's Josh Allen, clearly the top guy. And then we have Jalen Hurts rushing, but then it's just all pocket passers this week. So it might give it a little more leniency because in a typical week, you would just say, yeah, I'm not the pricing's too tight at quarterback. Like you said, I can make this $1,000 work. I'll go to the guy that offers the 30 to 35 point ceiling instead of the guy that's going to maybe hit salary and give me 18 to 20 and hit and say that that's a hit. He can't get to that elite level. So yeah, I think that this slate does give him a little more viability in terms of just the way it's constructed.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. Also, like for my specific contest that I'm playing, the smaller field stuff, I really do want to focus on guys that I can at least double stack. So there's certain situations where some of these rushing quarterbacks make a little bit more sense as a skinny single stack, and that's just not really optimal in my opinion in some of these smaller fields, because you want to take those kind of question marks out of it and get some more roster spots filled by correlation. So definitely an interesting quarterback slate. And Reeves, I guess realized that I skipped right over the second game that you wanted to talk about. So let's talk about Tennessee at Indy. The Colts are 1.5 point home favorites here per FanDuel Sportsbook. It is the highest total on the slate at 51 points. Interesting to see the under getting a little bit of steam, but this is just a weird slate. Last week we had a smaller slate, only 10 games, but there were some really like high flying offenses that we wanted to attack. This week it's a little bit different, 12 games, and some of these games, like it looks like there's a pretty large spread on them. Everyone's going to talk about the Bills, everyone's going to talk about the Bucs, but this Tennessee and Indy game is super interesting. So I'm curious your thoughts on it.
Yeah, I can see that, you lay a game total out over 50 points with two teams in the top 10 in run rate. If people want to come and steam the under, and you got two running back centric teams, their best players on each side of the ball are running backs. But we have seen the Titans start to figure this thing out a little bit. They started the season slow, and, obviously they had some, injuries. But, the past 2 weeks, they look good against the Bills. And they beat the Chiefs, knocked those teams out back-to-back weeks. But big factor is they've started to be able to stay in game scripts where they can run more play action. Their play action rate's up over 35% the past 3 weeks. We know Tannehill's got those jarring play action versus non-play action splits. And they've kept him clean. He's been sacked on just one of his past 59 dropbacks the past 2 weeks. It was 9.9% of his dropbacks prior. So keeping Tannehill comfortable has been a huge part of the process here in this turnaround offensively. The Colts are dead last in the NFL in pressure rate. So we've kind of got this spot here where it kind of lines up to keep him clean again. When these teams played in week 3, Tannehill had his highest scoring game of the season, and that was in a game where Arthur Juan only played 15 snaps and Julio Jones only played 50% of the snaps, and he still got there. Now we're going to have Julio back another week, of health. He only played 43% of snaps last week, but we think that goes up probably again this week. And then Arthur Juan's looking like the guy we thought we were going to get early in the season, his past 6 quarters of football. So we've got that kind of working for us as well. So if you don't want to just pay for the big dog and play him, the Colts are also a terrible matchup against the pass. We've seen them. They're 30th in passing points allowed per game, 26th in passing points allowed per attempt. They're actually number 1 in the NFL in EPA against the run. And the big dog got there for 113 yards rushing when they played in week 3, but he had to work for it at least. They made him work. He had to rush 28 times to get there. So they made him work for his yardage in that one. We obviously the big dog matchups don't really matter, whatever, but it still exists for be a high to lean into the Titans passing game here to have a lot of success. The Colts haven't stopped anyone against the pass. And they had one rain-soaked game on Sunday night that still didn't even impact. Like I said, they're still 30th against the pass for fantasy production. On the other side of the ball too, I feel like this is a thing where we still have a larger body of work with the Titans defense being awful than outside of last week when they held the Chiefs to 3 points. I still am willing to go back against them being a really bad defense, one we want to attack through the air. And we've seen Carson Wentz continuously get there. Even last week he had 20 fantasy points. He did do a little bit on the ground to help him get there, but that exists as part of his game. You get a little bit of that as the package. He's had 17 or more fantasy points now in every game but one. It was the time these two teams played in week 3, but it was also a game where he only practiced once with those 2 hurt ankles. I think we'll see a different performance here indoors, healthier. We saw them get Quentin Nelson back last week. They're getting Braden Smith, the right tackle, back this week. It's all starting to kind of congeal together where the Colts are starting to feel like a little better of an offense. And they're getting up a little bit more steam. They're also getting a little more religion on using Jonathan Taylor as an alpha back. We've seen him now go over 100 total yards from scrimmage in each of the past 4 games. His snap rate's gone up from the week prior in each of his past 5 games. He even ran a pass route in 58% of the team dropbacks the past 2 games after 38% the weeks prior. So we've got him, on the board. He's looking like an elite running back. Michael Pittman still is underpriced for his usage. We might have T.Y. Hilton play, who out-targeted Michael Pittman when these two teams, when they were both on the field 2 weeks ago. But T.Y. Hilton didn't run any pass routes in that game against the Texans. He still ran a pass route on just 69% of the dropbacks, while Pittman still has been out there for 96% of the dropbacks. That's sixth among all wide receivers in the NFL. His usage still dictates that he should be a little bit higher priced. And then we know, like I said, even with last week factored in, the Titans are still 28th in yards per target allowed to wide receivers, 24th in fantasy points allowed per target to opposing wide receivers. So you have that kind of working for as well. The Colts are also starting to use Mo Alley-Cox a little bit more, and they've also talked about even extending his role a little bit more, but he's a little bit he's a fat touchdown dependent tight end right now. Yeah. But so I don't know if we go there, but if you're running double stacks, maybe you get cute with him. That's it. But yeah, I mean, this is a game that still, I think, serves itself for as run heavy these teams are, does serve itself up for both passing games to be effective.
Your boy Arthur Juan, man, I don't know why that makes me laugh every time. So AJ Brown back in play, obviously. Last week led the league by a very, very large margin in weighted opportunity. So hopefully that continues. One of those things that like you kind of had to pay for it to see if he was going to be completely healthy from all the Chipotle issues the week before. But it sounds like he's in a good spot to continue to be an option for us in fantasy. So what was kind of interesting about this game, if we're just looking purely at the Sims, there's not a lot of players from this game that are popping in this, which is interesting with it being such a high total. Jonathan Taylor, 11%, is actually the highest player in this game that fits in the optimal rate. I just kind of wanted to see where the big dog Derrick Henry landed. Only 8% of the optimals at 10.5. But man, we just don't have these elite running backs to attack anymore. It feels like, at least on this slate, it doesn't feel like we have it. Obviously, Kamara, the price point is really nice against Tampa Bay, but man, I don't know. Like, does it feel like another slate maybe where we're just going to jam in 4 wide receivers and move on?
It very well could be. Even on FanDuel this year, I find myself more gravitating towards the wide receiver flex. And I don't know if it's just because you're tying up salary later, but I have found that I've been going that route and having a little bit more success instead of just the typical by the scoring we'd want to play 3 running backs, right? In the past. But I have found myself actually playing more wide receivers in the flex.
All right, let's touch quickly. Obviously, we kind of buried the lead in some ways. Bills, Rams, Chiefs, Bucks, like all these, Chiefs not on the main slate. Bills, Rams, and Bucks, pretty high implied team totals for those. Not a lot of really great options on the other side of it. So do you have any interest on stacking up one of those teams? I think that the price points are kind of interesting for the Buffalo guys. I think that with Knox out, it's actually an interesting Gabriel Davis week potentially. If you wanted to add him to your stack. Obviously, Emmanuel Sanders still pretty underpriced, and then our boy Stephon Diggs. So I actually have a lot of interest in the Bills side of that game. So I'll phrase it to you like this, I guess. If you were to go through the Bills, the Bucks, and the Rams, do you have a favorite stack of those 3? Because I think that's a question a lot of people are going to have this week.
Yeah, I think objectively it's hard not to say the Rams, but I also believe those are the guys that are all going to come with the highest ownership.
Correct.
From top down. So, because I mean, you've got this Rams team that's been awesome facing the Houston Texans. Like they're going to get they're the safest play, but they're also the most popular. So you're going to have to get unique in at least some of your builds there with that. The Bills are interesting because they're the team at 1:00, right? And so do you want to tie up all your salary at 1:00 and stacking that game? So, the first time these teams played the Miami, because we know Miami's just going to blitz, right? They're going to blitz with blitz. That's what they do. They're 4th in the NFL in blitz rate. That's what Brian Flores does. They blitzed Josh Allen 33% of his dropbacks in that game, and he struggled against the blitz. He was 4 of 12 passing against the blitz, 4.7 yards per attempt. But then he's been way better against pressure and the blitz since then. He's 67% against the blitz since then, 8.6 yards per pass attempt as it's gone on. And then Miami, as you've seen last week with Matt Ryan, even having, Xavier Howard and Brian Jones back on the field, like this is a pass defense that's just outright struggling. So I don't have any problem with that. Like I said, and I look at the way the slate is, Josh Allen is the one quarterback that does both things we look for. He can run and he can throw. Hurts might be able to do both against the Lions, but right now he's still a rushing dependent quarterback, and then the rest of the guys are pocket passers. So, I mean, Josh Allen, I believe, has an edge on the field here. You got to pay for it. He's the most expensive quarterback on that slate. He's tricky to get the stacks right though too, right? Like we're in a little weird zone with him because it's not just Diggs this year. They're getting contributions from Emmanuel Sanders. We've seen Cole Beasley go all over the place. His target, he'll have 13 targets one game and 2 the next. And then
he's always the guy that's hardest to click on, isn't it? Because Gabriel Davis, you can talk yourself into some narrative where there's some upside there, especially now that Knox is out. And even just like playing Knox at times was nice because you knock out like the tight end position. So it's like, it always feels like Cole Beasley, to me at least, is the hardest one to play. And he always comes in at the lowest ownership too. So I don't know. And he's priced up like probably more expensive than he should be, 6,100. So I don't know. That one's weird.
Yeah, and I also think the Rams side also has the most natural bring back. I think people will just look at Cooks with Tyrod Van back. He's 6K, and they'll say easy game, right? Like easy run back.
Sure.
No matter who you're playing. If you're playing Darrell, if you're playing pass catchers, it's easy to do. And it's not the same for the Bucks, right? Like, the Bucks are in the spot where you're not gonna have Antonio Brown, but you get Gronk back. But also when these teams played last year, and granted it was last year, but like the Saints gave Brady a bunch of problems last year. He threw for 239 yards or fewer in all 3 games. We know we have the rivalry, the Marshawn Lattimore, Mike Evans battle. It's just super fun always. I love these guys. They shove each other around the whole game. Lattimore has come out ahead of this mostly all but one game. They've had 8 matchups together, and Mike Evans has had one game where he's been higher than a wide receiver 2. Also, this season, we've seen Mike Evans shadowed twice by Trayvon Diggs and Darius Slay, and those are his worst games of the season by far. 3 for 24 and 2 for 27.
It does feel like some of these wide receivers at least are, like Amari Cooper comes to mind also, of guys that are a little bit more sensitive to like these cornerback matchups. Like we can laugh about it all day long about how this wide receiver cornerback thing sometimes doesn't matter. But I mean, for specific guys, like it's pretty hard to say that it doesn't, right? And Evans does feel like one of them.
Yeah, I mean, Evans is one of those guys. He can win on everyone, right?
Sure.
He's got the size and speed.
But the ceiling aspect of it is harder to get to. Yeah.
Yeah, and like I said, we've seen him shadowed twice this season by 2 different cornerbacks, and this is objectively by far the worst games of the season. So that's just going to push everyone to Godwin again, who came in with like massive ownership last week after AB was out, and he only went up $500 in salary. He went to 72, right? Which is just not enough. He's going to be really popular again because people are going to say, all right, Lattimore, same thing. So the targets are all going to go to Godwin. He's just not priced high enough. So I think people will kind of glom onto him. But the problem is, again, like who do you run it back with? You can run it back with Kamara, but then it's a running back against the Bucks, which you feel like is never, even if he hits, is he going to hit a ceiling game?
Right.
Like you can say, yeah, Kamara is good enough to get over on the Bucks. He's done it before, but like look at his ceiling performance. Can he get you 30? Can he get at his salary? Can he get you 25? Can he get you 30? You don't want to pay for 17 points. It's tough. So yeah, I don't know exactly what we'll see. I think the Bucks will still be popular just because they've been popular on everybody. But this Saints defense is viable, and they were really good against the Bucks last year. And with no Antonio Brown, it's just one less weapon for them to worry about. And very intriguing matchup though. Overall.
Yeah, I think I just would have had more interest in Kamara if he was going to come in a little bit less owned. Like everyone just saw Khalil Herbert run all over Tampa Bay for 100 yards, and now Kamara at his price point, 8,400, looking like he could even reach like 20-25%. So at that point, it's a little bit of a tougher sell for me. I think that if you are going to be paying up, it just makes sense in some ways just to start playing Cooper Kupp. Maybe that's my biases because I haven't played him much at all this year because he's so much harder to click for me personally than someone like Devontae Adams or Tyreek Hill in that price range.
This week.
Yeah, so what do you think about Cooper Kupp quickly, because he's one that I just need someone to like force me to play, I think, at this point.
I mean, listen, they're just absolutely he's been so amazing. He's actually now he's almost rivaling the big dog in terms of just weekly hit rate and like at his salary.
Well, both those guys have like really separated at the position almost, right? Like Cooper Kupp and Derrick Henry have just like, man, they've just
and the Rams are so, because I saw people say, well, how did Darrell Henderson not get there last week against the Lions? And you look at the Rams and what they're doing in the red zone, they are so pass heavy. They ran 12 red zone plays last week, and they called out pass play on 11 of them. Like Darrell Henderson had one carry, and he had that wheel route that almost helped him. But the whole point of you when you play these teams again, these high total games, is to get those easy bunny touchdowns, right? Darrell Henderson had no carries in the green zone. Which really hurt him. But they are looking for the season. They're 5th in the NFL in pass rate inside the 10-yard line, 5th in the NFL in pass rate inside the red zone. And that's where Cooper Kupp is just living. I mean, look at how the easy plays they're just dialing up to get touchdowns. And if you're going to get touchdowns on FanDuel, it's going to help you out of getting there all the time. That's how he has 9 touchdowns on the year. So yeah, I mean, he's a guy. I think you can build a stack with him still on this slate. I think Tyler Higbee is the guy people will probably look to pivot to in that game that aren't paying up. They're playing Goddard. So he'll be the one guy I think that you can make a unique stack with. Maybe you run the double and you go Kupp and Higbee, and that's how you differentiate. But I do think we'll see Brandon Cooks run backs be popular. I think we'll see the Rams guys coming with a lot of high ownership.
Yeah, I think so too. One more thing before we move on to the lineup build, Reeves. I actually do, the more I look at this, I really like the Bills and Miami stack just because a lot of the secondary pieces past Diggs and past Josh Allen are coming in super low. So you can bring it back with Gesicki. You can, just add someone like Gabriel Davis to that stack and just like really differentiate yourself. Even Sanders at this point looking like around like 5 to 10%. So if that holds, I really like the idea of, yes, getting like that quarterback that can basically trump card the usage of almost all the other ones on the slate. So I like that quite a bit. All right, so we've made it through the games of the week. We have everything from Reeves so far that we needed. So I want everyone to pause this video, and I want you to let me know in the comments your favorite stack for week 8. Reeves, you ready to build a FanDuel team, my man?
Yeah, let's do it.
Right.
I think right now we're 7 weeks in. I think I'm 3 for 7. So like,
you are in the lead. I will say that. So we'll continue to kind of, I guess, at some point, I'm going to tally up the winnings. It's been pretty easy because we've had some weeks where we haven't had a lot of cashes. So it is very difficult to make these early in the week for sure. So yes, as Reeb said, this team will be in the Listener League at FanDuel.com/Holka. So make sure you guys get in there before it fills. $5, 3 max tournament, rake free, huge prizes. More importantly, it is the battle of the guests. Lineups from Reeves, Jake Seeley, and TJ Hernandez every single week. Reeves, where are we going this week?
I kind of like the angle you laid out. Let's start with Josh Allen.
Yes.
Because I think that, like I said, he does what Hurts is the only guy I think that can potentially get to like what he offers, like from a duality, like a plural stance of scoring points. So now the question is who we stack him with, though.
Yeah, so your options, obviously, Diggs is 73, Sanders 67. We have on the other side of the stack, Waddle and Gesicki. Pretty tightly condensed target share there so far. Both of those guys are mid 6Ks, so you got to pay a little bit more for it now. Dawson Knox out. So if we wanted to go all the way to like Gabriel Davis, he is extremely cheap. Let me see. I'll keep scrolling here. 4,700 for Gabe Davis on FanDuel.
Oh, man, 47?
That's like below most of the floor. Like you don't really see anyone like we saw, who was it? Ty Johnson at 4,800 with Brady last week, but you like rarely see guys below 5K.
And it's 47. It's pretty enticing. Maybe we'll make it a double, but let's do Diggs. Just because, I don't know, man. Maybe we'll never get this just because they're getting so many contributions from everyone else. Maybe we'll just never have the massive Diggs game. But
his snaps are down a little bit compared to last year, though, right? I guess that's got to be a concern when he was basically playing like 95% of the snaps like last year. Now it's like a little bit lower than that. So I don't know. Is it because they can do so much more with the secondary options now? I guess, what do you make of the Diggs thing? He's priced like where he should be, I suppose, but we haven't had like that explosion Stephon Diggs spot that we had a bunch of times last year.
Yeah, and I think some of it has to do with Emmanuel Sanders' deep targets have been more successful so far this season. Where a lot of the season John Brown was out last year, so like he was the one of the deep ball guys. But we'll keep chasing it here. We'll keep chasing. I always see Diggs at his price, and I'm just like, man, anytime he's not, because I consider him in my head all the time like a top 5 receiver. So anytime I see him like priced as like 7,300 like down here, I'm like, do I have to click the button?
Yeah, see, mine is like an ownership thing. If like Diggs is popular, I'm like, I can't miss out on that. Like at 30% of the field, it's gonna play Stephon Diggs, and I'm gonna be sitting here with like holding the bag. Like that seems bad. So I don't know, man. He's gonna be super chalky. So I actually do think you probably should double this if you want to differentiate it a little bit. But we can kind of wait if you want until we get a little bit deeper.
I will wait just to see what we could do.
Okay. Do you want to bring back?
I don't think I do. So a couple of reasons why are that, one, I do stock the Bills defense a little bit, being legit. Also, from a matchup stance, I don't like either of the guys. Gesicki's had one in 7 career games against the Bills. He's had one good game, and it's with Matt Milano out. And then also the last time these teams played, the Bills pressured the Dolphins quarterback 60% of their dropbacks. So that scares me a little bit, especially because the Dolphins have gotten there the last 2 weeks against the Jaguars and the Falcons.
Has Tua struggled under pressure a decent amount?
Yeah, I mean, that's why their offensive line is terrible, and that's why all these guys have such low ADOTs, because they have to get rid of the ball. Got it. That's why he can't take any downfield shots, because he has to get the ball out of his hands. So I don't know if we'll run it back yet. I don't think I will. I don't like Waddle's. Waddle's a guy I love when he's in the 5s, and I don't know if I love him in the 6s. Yeah,
this is like a significant price jump for him. I feel like 6,400. I feel like he's been in the 5s for so long. I guess at some point you have to price a guy up that's getting, 21 targets in 2 weeks.
He's a DraftKings guy, man. Not Agreed. To say that name on this podcast, but or the show, but he's built to score points there. Yeah, we want one of these guys.
We'll bleep it out.
We want one of these guys that can get his salary with one target.
Agreed. And he's not like that like prototypical like body of like a touchdown scorer, right? So that's what I struggle with a little bit. Like the usage, like obviously he can break a big play. I mean, he hasn't been used down the field because their offensive line's been so bad. But like if in the open field, could break a big one, and then the yardage is what matters. But like as far as like being a touchdown scorer outside of that one game he had this year, like it's harder to like I guess get the archetype around my brain. So where else do you want to go with this one, Reeves?
Yeah, this one's interesting. I want to run this since we're playing a stack that might be popular, Diggs and Allen, and maybe we'll add the stack to make it unique with Gabe Davis. We'll see. Let's play one of the minis I'm looking at that we didn't talk about, and let's play Nick Chubb and Chase Claypool together.
Ooh. Claypool's the guy we talked about with Harmon. So if anyone's watching this video, definitely check out the wide receiver, the trending wide receivers video.
I thought I was being cool.
I know you guys are. I like when you guys are like in line on like kind of a guy that I haven't really been thinking about a ton, and he's definitely one of them. So that's interesting. But this is going to go super low. People aren't going to want to play Chubb off of that injury. People don't want to play Chase Claypool because of how bad Ben's been. Ben's like a bottom 5 completion percentage below expectation player this year. But man, 6,500 for a touchdown scoring wide receiver. That is the archetype, right? So I'm with you on that.
Yeah, I mean his price and the types of targets he's been getting. And his target share has been so good when one of these guys has been out of the lineup that I just want to keep going back to it. I'm ready for the takeoff. He's easily a guy that could end up at some point in the rest of the season being, 74, 7,500, based on his archetype. If he strings a couple of these games together. And the Browns have been really good against the run. They've been excellent against the run so far this year and been giving it up a little bit on the back end. So it feels like one of those games. I can go to him, and then just Chubb I feel like he's a pure tournament play this week.
You sub 10% for sure, which I mean, at that price point, like you just won't get, I mean, you're not going to get that type of leverage a lot of other places. So I'm in on that. These are the exact type of minis that I like to do, especially at 1 p.m. when you have a little bit more information later.
Right. We might be making some swaps in this one, but when we saw Kareem Hunt not play in 2019 while he was still serving his suspension, Chubb's splits were just amazing. 74% of the snaps, 52% of team touches, 12% target share. His rates this year are 52% snaps, 35% team touches, and 4% of the team targets. I do believe Dearness Johnson is going to play a role in this game, but definitely not to the degree that Kareem Hunt was playing. So I kind of want to get in on it early with the Q tag and with Case Keenum still being involved.
Like it. Yeah, 5,800 the rest of the way. Yeah, Case Keenum, Jesus. Okay.
So we have 5,800 the rest of the way.
I guess not counting defense. So you've got a little bit more to work with here than it seems.
All right, let's plug in Higbee then for the salary, and we'll get a piece of the Rams, and then we'll go against Goddard.
Higbee is one that's interesting because it obviously is direct leverage off of a lot of other chalk in that game. But like, does Higbee end up being the guy that gets steamed up to like 15% or so? Because at that point, I think I prefer Goddard. But it's definitely if he ends up being lower than 10%, then he's a smash. I think. But that's one I want to see later in the week. I think.
I do think he's going to get steamed. But I also just think Goddard's price is so ludicrous that he's going to be 30% anyways.
That could be.
Like when people just look at Goddard's usage, like, I mean, because Goddard, like in cash, like if you're playing cash games, there's no way you don't click Goddard. Like,
well, it's just FanDuel. It's like so easy to get up to these other guys, but this is a slate where we don't have anyone outside of Kyle Pitts at the very top. So like, there's a ton of plays that like Ricky Seals-Jones is 5,400, man. Like the usage for him has been really strong. And then there's like, I mean, this is a really interesting tight end slate. So that's what makes me want to just try and not to play Goddard in tournaments, because all these other guys you can say have like at least comparable ceilings, and they're going to be half the ownership or less. So I'm with you.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so we did get a little salary maybe back.
6K, and then let's jam in some sort of defense here to make me, I guess, picture this a little bit better.
All right, yeah, I'm surprised you didn't make me do the defense yet.
You don't like when I make you do this, but it does make it easier for the people watching.
So I had a lot of success last week, obviously just paying for a defense, and I don't know what we have at the bottom here. Not a lot is standing out at the bottom. They did make the Jets 3K though.
I know we talked about that on the first look too, that there just wasn't a lot to like down there unless you just want to go all the way down and punt it off at 3K.
I mean, they did just go the 3K. Remember the old was it Draft Street that made like the Jaguars defense like
1,000 or something? Yeah, whatever.
Like
it was
something crazy. And they had a pick 6. Yeah. It was against the Manning Broncos, and like Paul Posluszny had a pick 6, and
I feel like if you would do that now, they would be owned like crazy. But if you like back then, people were like, I'm not playing that defense. You kidding me? So it was like actually kind of a weird thing. Yeah.
So let's at least get in the middle here, maybe. I guess I'm looking at Bucks or Broncos. Bucks against Jameis seemed pretty appealing, and they got there last week. Jameis has been so bad under pressure too.
Yeah. 4,200 for the Bucks. That's definitely a mid-range one. And you're leveraging a little bit if you think that like the Tampa Bay side of that is going to be popular, right?
Yeah, a little bit. So let's put them in and see what we have to work with.
6,600 now the rest of the way. So you definitely have some more room now. Even more room if you want to jam in Gabe Davis.
It's really if I want to go Gabe Davis or not. And I just don't know if I do, man.
I'm talking you into it, man. I'm not trying to talk you into the guy that's going to get like 2 points, man. Do your thing. This is your team.
I think I'm going to chalk it. I'll go chalk here because I don't think I have a ton of chalk on this yet. So let's just go with Elijah Mitchell.
All right.
At 58. His role is just, I mean, we just need him to get in the box at 58.
7K the rest of the way. You can go like pretty high equity, like mini stack if you want to now.
He's paying that off if he gets there. Yeah. So is there a mini? Like we have flex and wide receiver?
Yep. A flex and wide receiver. You could probably at that point play Cup and Cooks. No, you can't. You miss it by right? No, Cup not even close actually. Cup is so expensive.
He's 92.
Yeah, I'm just looking at some of these like higher end pricing guys for wide receiver. You could do probably a DJ Moore, Calvin Ridley maybe. Nope, you missed that by about 600.
Let's just move away. Let's not because we have an oddball mini in here already.
True.
With Claypool and Chubb. So, and we got a decent amount of correlation. We'll see what happens. Maybe I could go Cooks with Higbee. But I kind of like a couple plays here in the mid range that I think might go overlooked, and they're going to free us up some salary leeway if our Chubb stack doesn't get there.
Okay.
And I say this like I'm going to late swap with you, like I'm going to call you. But let's go Keenan Allen.
Mm-hmm.
Another guy that just, the flop lag will just keep chasing.
The price it scares me. It's because it's so good, and this guy just like does not like profile as a guy that's ever going to get there on FanDuel. And then if he's super low, that's going to be the week he scores 3.
Yeah, I mean, the Brandon Staley has talked about coming out of the bye, wanting to be more aggressive on early downs and throw the ball on early downs more. And also the New England Patriots are number 1 against perimeter wide receivers and points allowed. So maybe that we with those two pairings of wanting to be aggressive and maybe being able to limit Big Mike a little bit, it funnels some stuff to Keenan. This is just me talking myself into the play.
Oh, I got you. So basically what you have left, 7,200, you can go Chris Godwin, you can go Leonard Fournette, Cortland Sutton, Calvin Ridley. So definitely plenty of room to do something pretty high end here.
All right. So we could play Goddard if we want.
Mm-hmm.
And then we can also just say, direct leverage is Cortland Sutton against Washington. Mm-hmm. No one's going to want to play Cortland Sutton this week, right? Against
probably
Judy
not.
Coming back and then Washington. But then we have also got Godwin with a good quarterback, actually, though.
I would say maybe the tiebreaker is just since you have Tampa Bay defense in there, maybe Sutton at a little bit lower ownership. And man, like we were falling over ourselves to play these wide receivers against Washington. And now just because Judy's coming back, people want to jump off of Cortland Sutton. I think that's kind of a sharp way to go about this one.
All right, then let's do it.
You make the call though, Reeves. It's your team. I'm talking to you into these plays that are going to be
I think Sutton's a really good play because historically we've shown players returning from Judy's injury, the first 2 weeks are typically have a 20% decline in production they had. And then also, like you said, Washington, I mean, they're a 52% completion rate and throws over 15 yards downfield, paired with the guy that's number 2 in the NFL in air yards per game. We'll roll the dice.